Welcome to the laboratory of social vivisection. Leave your illusions about justice and humanity at the door. In this space, you are either the architect of your own reality or the building material for someone else's. The majority of you live in a cocoon of imaginary safety, believing that politeness is armor. That is a mistake. In the world of social predators, politeness is a signal that you have been tamed. If you do not understand the mechanisms of dominance, you have already lost. You simply have not yet tasted your own blood on your lips. I am not here to comfort you. I am here to dissect the mistakes of those who allowed themselves to be broken and to teach you how to turn their attack into their own downfall. Today, we shall analyze the highest form of psychological sadism and simultaneously a perfect tool of defense: total ignorance. We shall learn how silence can become louder than a scream, and how to force an aggressor to writhe in the convulsions of their own impotence. If you recognize yourself or your past reactions in the described patterns or character behaviors, please leave a plus in the comments. This is not a sign of weakness, but the first signal that your brain has begun the process of deconstructing old habits. Chapter 1. Anatomy of the Vacuum. The Effect of Imaginary Safety. 1. Phase quote _2 the office of the company quote _3. Is saturated with the scent of expensive perfume and the faint aroma of ozone from working servers. Mark is sitting in the conference room. Opposite him is Sarah, a senior partner. She does not look at him. She looks through him while adjusting the cuff of her blouse. 3 other people are in the room. They are conducting a lively discussion about a takeover strategy. But every time Mark attempts to interject, Sarah smoothly intercepts the initiative as if his voice does not exist. This is not an accident. This is social castration. I have studied the logistics report. There is a critical error in the calculations, Mark says. Internal monologue. My heart is beating faster. I feel my throat tightening. Why are they silent? Did I say it too quietly? No, they heard me. James even looked away for a second. They are participating in this. Sarah does not even turn her head. James, her voice sounds like a blade sliding over silk. Continue regarding the logistics. We need professional data, not guesswork. Action. She barely noticeably raises an eyebrow while looking at James. This is a nonverbal command. Quote _4 . Mark feels the heat rising from his neck to his face. The air in the room becomes thick, like jelly. The sound of the working air conditioner turns into a roar. He physically feels how his presence in this room is being erased. 2. Phase quote _5 . What is happening to Mark is called social ostracism combined with environmental gaslighting. Mechanism of attack. Sarah uses the tactic of quote _6 . By denying a person feedback, even negative feedback, the aggressor strikes the most ancient part of our brain, the amygdala. Neurochemistry. At this moment, Mark's brain records the situation as a threat to his life. A massive dose of cortisol is released into the blood. For our ancestor on the savannah, expulsion from the tribe meant inevitable death. Today, there is no physical death, but the brain reacts in the same way, with panic and the suppression of the prefrontal cortex, logical thinking. Cognitive suppression. When you are ignored in a group, your ability to think rationally drops by 25 to 30%. You begin to make mistakes, stutter, or exhibit aggression, which is Sarah's goal. She is waiting for his breakdown to document his quote 7 or quote 8-3. Phase quote 9. Let us recall the classic experiment by Professor Kip Williams called quote 10. The subject plays a simple computer ball game with two other quote 11, who are actually bots. At first, the ball is thrown to everyone equally. But then the bots begin to throw the ball only to each other, completely ignoring the real person. Result: MRI brain scans show that at the moment of social exclusion, the subject's anterior cingulate cortex is activated, the same area responsible for registering physical pain. Mark's brain is not just quote 12. It is experiencing real, physical pain, comparable to a knife strike. Sarah knows this at an instinctive level. She is a predator who breaks the victim's bones without touching them with a finger. 4. Phase. Counter-strike. Mark makes a classic mistake. He tries to earn attention, talks more, and makes excuses. This is food for the predator. The correct strategic decision here is radical pragmatism. If you have been excluded from the game, create your own game within their space. Lesson number 1. The person who needs the approval of others the least possesses absolute power. Mark should have done the following. Severing visual contact. Stop seeking Sarah's gaze. She feeds on his confusion. Filling the vacuum with one's own resource. Instead of wedging into their conversation, Mark opens his laptop and begins to type, fully immersing himself in the process. He demonstrates that his attention is a scarce resource that they have just lost. Interception of initiative through the external environment. Leave the room for water or approach the window. Physical movement destroys the statics of the victim. When Sarah later, and she will do this to check the degree of his roasting, addresses him, he must respond with a 3-second delay without looking away from the screen. Mark, did you want to say something? Pause. 1, 2, 3. He slowly raises his eyes. His face is a mask of absolute indifference. Not anymore, Sarah. I have sent the edits directly to the investors. Continue. He returns to the laptop. Result: the ball is now on his side. He has created a vacuum for her. Now she must wonder what exactly he sent to the investors and why he is so calm. Chapter 2. Erosion of Identity. The Silent Killer. In Personal Life 1. Phase. The collision. The living room in Sophia's house is flooded with soft lamplight. The aroma of expensive candles and white wine hangs in the air. Chloe takes a sip, trying to steady the trembling in her hands. David is standing nearby. 5 minutes ago, he was the soul of the company, joking with guests and hugging Chloe by the waist. But as soon as they stepped aside to the window, he suddenly cooled down. He looks through her at the garden. His face has turned into a motionless wax mask. David, is something wrong? I saw how you changed after I mentioned your new project. Chloe's voice sounds pathetic. She feels it herself. Internal monologue. He is silent. Again. This cold is physically pressing on my chest. Did I do something wrong? Did I hurt his ego? My God, I just wanted to praise him in front of our friends. Why is the silence so loud? David slowly turns his head. His gaze is empty. He looks not into her eyes, but at the bridge of her nose. A technique that deprives the interlocutor of the feeling of human contact. You are imagining it, Chloe. Your imagination is running wild again. In parentheses, he intentionally lowers his voice, forcing her to lean closer, subordinating her body to his will. Then he simply turns away and walks to the bar, leaving her standing alone in the vacuum. 2. Phase. Quote 19 ___. David is applying the classic quote, 20, icy, ignoring, in combination with elements of intermittent reinforcement. Mechanism of attack. This is a form of emotional abuse aimed at destroying the boundaries of the personality. By depriving Chloe of verbal contact, David creates a situation of uncertainty. The brain hates uncertainty more than open aggression. Terminology. Quote, 21, This is the final stage of emotional dismantling. He does not argue. He simply quote 22 Chloe from his reality. This forces her to enter a cycle of self-blame. Neurochemistry. At this moment, Chloe experiences a sharp drop in dopamine, which she was receiving from his attention 5 minutes ago, and a powerful release of adrenaline. She enters quote 23 quote mode. She is ready for any concessions, just so that he quote 24 her again. He is training her like a laboratory animal. 3. Phase, quote 25. Let us recall the famous quote 26 experiment conducted by Dr. Edward Tronick in the 1970s. In the course of the study, a mother first actively interacts with her infant, smiles, and reacts to their gestures. Then, upon a signal, she makes her face absolutely motionless and devoid of emotion. Result: the child instantly reads the threat. First, the infant attempts to regain the mother's attention with smiles, then screams, and when that does not work, falls into a state of deep stress, turns away, and physically goes limp. Chloe in David's hands is that very child. Her adult brain shuts down, activating childhood survival patterns. David uses the biological hardwiring of a human to turn an adult woman into a vulnerable bundle of nerves. 4. Phase, Quote 27, Chloe's main mistake is the attempt to reach out. Each of her questions, what happened, forgive me, is a confirmation of his power. She feeds his ego with her panic. Lesson number 2, silence. In response to silence is not passivity. It is a counteroffensive. If David has decided to play disappearance, Chloe must make his disappearance final for herself. Acceptance of the game. As soon as he turns on stone mode, Chloe must instantly cease any attempts at contact. No questions, no glances. Emotional dissociation. She must shift her attention to other people, not demonstratively having fun, which is also a reaction to him, but sincerely immersing herself in conversation with Sophia. Radical pragmatism. She should leave the party earlier without warning him, or simply call a taxi when she becomes bored. When David realizes that his ignoring does not cause pain, but gives Chloe freedom, his power will crumble. A manipulator always expects you to beat against a closed door. If you simply turn around and walk away, he will be left in the void that he himself created. Chapter 3. Mirror of emptiness. The mechanics of public humiliation. 1. Phase. The collision. The private club. The obsidian. Semi-darkness, the smell of expensive tobacco and old wood. Arthur stands at the bar. His hand holds a glass of mineral water confidently, but without tension. He is a new player here, a dark horse. Logan approaches him, a man whose influence in this circle is built on fear and caustic wit. Logan is followed by a trail of a retinue, ready to laugh at the first signal. Arthur, I heard about your last project in Austin. Logan's voice is loud enough to attract the attention of neighboring tables. Amazing. Not everyone is capable of spending investors' money with such enthusiasm on something that was stillborn from the start. Tell us, What is it like to be a professional bankrupt? Action. Logan takes a step into Arthur's personal space. His face is distorted by a condescending smirk. The retinue freezes in anticipation of excuses or retaliatory aggression. Arthur does not change his posture. He slowly turns his head and looks Logan directly in the eyes. He is silent. Internal monologue. 1 second. 2. I see a twitch in the corner of his eye. He expects me to start defending myself. He invested energy into this strike, and if I do not provide my jaw, he will fall forward. His pulse is currently about 95. Mine is 62. The silence drags on. It becomes tangible, like cold water filling the room. Logan begins to feel awkward. His smirk freezes. Are you deaf? Logan tries to save the situation, but a false note slips into his voice. Arthur continues to look at him, as if studying a strange insect, frozen in amber. He does not utter a sound. 2. Phase, __. Quote, _38, __, Arthur replies, __, quote, _39, __, mechanism of attack. Logan attempts to impose a frame of __, quote, _40, on Arthur. Public insult requires a reaction. Any verbal reaction, argument, excuse, retaliatory thrust, confirms that Arthur has accepted Logan's rules of the game. Terminology: reactive devaluation. When you do not react, you devalue the very personality of the attacker. In the hierarchy of primates, if an alpha male exhibits aggression and an individual of a lower rank ignores it without fear, this places the alpha's status under mortal threat. Physiology: the cortisol trap. Logan expected a release of adrenaline in Arthur. Not receiving it, Logan's brain falls into cognitive dissonance. His own limbic system begins to perceive Arthur's silence as a sign of hidden, superior strength. Logan begins to experience fear, which he tries to hide behind even greater, but now clumsy, aggression. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. Let us recall the classic studies of social pressure by Solomon Asch, Asch conformity experiments. In the experiment, a group of Confederates gave deliberately false answers about the length of lines on cards. The subject, seeing that everyone was speaking incorrectly, often agreed with them, fearing to become an outcast. But there is an important nuance. If at least one person appeared in the group who simply remained silent or gave the correct answer, the group's pressure on the subject fell by 80%. Arthur is that very, quote, 44 here. Logan's retinue relies on the confidence of their leader. When Arthur demonstrates through his silence that Logan does not control the situation, the retinue begins to internally distance themselves from the losing leader. Logan is literally losing power in real time because one person refused to play his game. 4. Phase, counterstrike. Arthur's counterstrike consists of forcing Logan to quote 47, his aggression to the point where it becomes pathetic. Lesson number 3. The one who first breaks the silence after an insult admits their weakness. Arthur's strategy. The empty mirror technique. Look at the aggressor without expression. You are a screen onto which he projects his own insecurity. Delay of reaction. When Logan finally loses face and begins to fuss, Arthur pauses for another 5 seconds. Minimal verbal exit. Logan, Arthur says in a quiet but deep voice. Are you finished? Action. He does not wait for an answer, shifts his gaze to the bartender, and places an order. Logan is erased. He no longer exists in this reality. Chapter 4. Protocol. Apathy. When the system becomes the enemy 1. Phase, the collision, the boardroom on the 40th floor. Sterile white walls, panoramic windows behind which the gray, rainy metropolis stretches out. Ethan sits in the center of a long table. Opposite him are 5 members of the ethics committee, led by Mr. Blackwood. Blackwood is the embodiment of the system. His voice is even, devoid of intonation. His movements have been calibrated by decades of bureaucratic wars. They have already been trying for 2 hours to force Ethan to admit guilt for a data leak that they themselves organized. Ethan, we all understand that the pressure was great. Blackwood pauses, expecting Ethan to start making excuses. If you sign these papers now, we will be able to classify this as negligence rather than sabotage. Action. Blackwood slides a folder forward. All other committee members simultaneously lean forward, creating a physical ring of pressure. Ethan looks at the folder. Then he shifts his gaze to the clock on the wall. He does not take the pen. He does not shake his head. He simply sits. Internal monologue. Tick-tock. The second hand moves in jerks. They want my reaction. They need me to get angry, to scream about injustice. Anger is a legal recognition of their power. My pulse is normal. I feel nothing but a slight curiosity as to how quickly Blackwood's patience will run out. Ethan, do you hear me? Blackwood's voice becomes slightly higher. In parentheses, program failure. The system did not receive the expected fear/submission response. Ethan is silent for another 10 seconds. Then he slowly, very slowly adjusts his tie while looking directly into Blackwood's eyes and leans back in his chair. Closing his eyes, he has literally switched himself out of the process. 2. Phase, ___. Quote _53 _ Ethan applies a dissociative barrier. In social psychology, this is the highest form of defense against group pressure. Mechanism of attack. The committee uses ___, quote _54 ___. They create an illusion of the inevitability of punishment to cause learned helplessness in Ethan. Terminology. __, quote _55 _ Ethan refuses to process their arguments as legitimate. For him, Blackwood is not a judge, but simply a source of sound waves. Physiology. The system is trying to trigger a cascade of adrenaline and norepinephrine in Ethan to cause a __, quote _56 _ reaction. By closing his eyes and relaxing his muscles, Ethan activates the parasympathetic nervous system. He forcibly lowers his stress level, making himself invulnerable to manipulation. 3. Phase. Let us recall the Stanford prison experiment by Philip Zimbardo, 1971. Ordinary students assigned to the roles of began to show sadistic tendencies towards the __, quote _59 _ simply because the system gave them that right. But there was one prisoner who refused to obey the rules of the system. He declared a hunger strike and entered a state of complete apathy. Analysis. The guards hated him more than anyone else. Why? Because his silence and refusal of food destroyed their reality. If the victim is not afraid and does not beg, the aggressor loses the meaning of their existence. The __, quote _60 _ system works only when there is a __, quote _61 _ in it. When Ethan stops playing the role of the accused, Blackwood stops being a judge. He turns into just an old man in an expensive suit who is talking into a void. 4. Phase, quote _62, quote. The counterstrike in a struggle with a system is the deprivation of its quote _63. Quote, the system needs your data, your emotions, your underscore underscore quote underscore 64 underscore underscore or underscore underscore quote underscore 65 underscore underscore lesson number 4. When you are forced to choose between two evils, choose silence. Silence is the only choice that the system cannot digest. How Ethan destroys their plan. Informational fast. He does not provide a single grain of new information. Any word can be used against him. Silence cannot. Destruction of tempo. The system loves fast attacks. Ethan slows everything down to the limit. His silence makes the committee nervous. They begin to say unnecessary things, trying to fill the pauses. Radical stoicism according to Nietzsche. Quote 66. But Ethan goes further. He understands that the system is an illusion maintained by general consent. He simply withdraws his consent. Chapter 5. Shadow of Control. The Art of Creating Phantoms 1. Phase underscore underscore quote underscore 67 underscore underscore A. Contemporary Art Gallery in London's Mayfair. Snow-white walls, spotlighting highlighting the sharp lines of sculptures. Marcus stands in a corner with a glass of ice water. He is a phantom here. He does not communicate, does not seek contacts. He simply observes. His target is Oliver, a young, ambitious gallerist who tried to push Marcus out of an important deal 2 months ago using dirty rumors. Oliver is currently at the peak of his triumph, surrounded by admirers. But he knows Marcus is in the hall. Oliver casts a quick glance toward Marcus. Marcus looks directly at him. But there is neither anger nor resentment in his gaze. It is the gaze of an entomologist studying a beetle. As soon as their eyes meet, Marcus does not look away, but he does not nod either. He looks for another 2 seconds and slowly shifts his gaze to the wall, as if Oliver is transparent glass. Action. Marcus does not take a single step forward. He violates the social protocol of greeting acquaintances. He is physically present, but socially absent. An hour later, Oliver can no longer concentrate on conversations. His jokes become forced. He constantly checks where Marcus is. Internal monologue of Oliver. Why is he silent? Does he know something? Does he have compromising material? That call last week, was that his man? Why is he looking at me as if I am already a corpse? Marcus notices how Oliver begins to reach for his glass more often. His movements become jerky. Marcus's silence begins to eat a hole in Oliver's confidence. 2. Phase psychological X-ray. Marcus uses the tactic of projective vacuum. Mechanism of attack. When we do not give a person any evaluation of their actions, their brain automatically begins to fill this void with its own fears and feelings of guilt. Terminology. Induced paranoia. This is a state in which the subject begins to see a threat where there is none, simply because they do not receive confirmation of their safety. Physiology. In Oliver's brain, the anterior cingulate gyrus is activated, which is responsible for monitoring conflicts. Since there is no real conflict, a quarrel, the brain begins to underscore quote underscore 72 underscore trying to predict Marcus's next move. The level of norepinephrine skyrockets, causing a state of constant anxiety and tunnel vision. Oliver no longer sees the gallery, he sees only Marcus. 3. Phase psychological precedent. Let us recall the concept of the panopticon, proposed by the philosopher Jeremy Bentham and later analyzed by Michel Foucault. The panopticon is an ideal prison where one guard can observe all prisoners from a central tower, but the prisoners do not know whether he is looking at them at any given moment. Result: the mere suspicion that they might be watched forces the prisoners to discipline themselves and fall into a state of constant stress. Marcus has turned the gallery into a panopticon and himself into an invisible guard. He does not need to do anything. Oliver punishes himself with his own imagination. 4. Phase counterstrike. An attack through ignoring is effective only when you create an effective presence. If you simply run away, it is weakness. If you stand nearby and remain silent, it is dominance. Lesson number 5. Your silence is a mirror. In it, the enemy sees not you, but their own demons. Strategic steps of Marcus. The principle of the inevitable gaze. Look at the target, but do not react to its attempts to establish contact, smiles, nods. Demonstrative indifference to the result. Show that you are busy with something of your own, for example, studying interior details. But do this in immediate proximity to the target. Departure at the peak. Marcus leaves the event exactly at the moment when Oliver is about to approach him to clarify the situation. Marcus leaves him with an open question for which there is no answer. This guarantees Oliver a sleepless night. Chapter 6. Code. Superman. The philosophy of total control 1. Phase. The collision. The top floor of Ethelgard Tower. Glass walls expose the night city, which seems only like a scattering of micro-circuits beneath one's feet. Adrian stands by the window. Behind him is the board of directors, people who have just voted for his removal from the management of his own empire. They are using his own weapon against him. Silence. No one says, quote 83. No one expresses regret. They simply gather documents, avoiding his gaze. This is a collective act of erasing the personality. Lucas, his former protege who has now taken his chair, slowly walks past. He lingers for a second. In his posture is triumph. He expects Adrian to turn around, that there will be rage, a plea, or at least recognition in his eyes. Internal monologue of Adrian. I hear the rustle of his silk tie. I feel the smell of his triumph, a mixture of sweat and expensive cologne. He is waiting for my reaction. This entire conspiracy was for one thing, to see me break. But they do not understand. I am no longer here. My brain scans their patterns, like the algorithms of an old program. Lucas is just a variable that will soon be replaced. My empire is not these walls. It is my mind. I am a constant. Adrian does not turn around. He does not even move. His reflection in the glass is motionless, like a rock. He continues to look at the city lights as if he is a god, observing the movement of atoms. The silence in the room becomes unbearable, no longer for him, but for them. Lucas nervously adjusts his watch. His triumph begins to rot without a spectator. 2. Phase, quote, 84. Adrian has reached a state that in applied psychology is called, quote, 85 mechanism of environment attack. The board of directors uses, quote, underscore 86, quote, as a tool of psychological execution. The goal is to cause a state of, quote, underscore 87, quote, in the object. Terminology, quote, underscore 88, quote, Lucas and the others are trying to turn Adrian into a underscore, quote, underscore 89, underscore entity to protect themselves from feelings of guilt and fear of his figure. Physiology. Unlike an ordinary person, Adrian does not experience a release of cortisol. Thanks to years of practice in cognitive reframing, he has transferred signals of underscore, quote, underscore 90, underscore into the category of underscore, quote, underscore 91, underscore. His prefrontal cortex completely dominates the limbic system. He is physiologically incapable of feeling resentment, as his self-referential system, the part of the brain responsible for, quote, underscore 92, quote, is not connected with social approval. 3. Phase, _93, quote. Let us recall the fundamental work of Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps. His book, _94, quote, is not about spirituality. It is about pure psychological survival strategy. Frankl noticed that it was not the physically weakest who perished first, but those who lost, 95, an internal support that did not depend on the external hell. He introduced the concept of, 96, the ability to choose one's attitude toward any circumstances. In the conditions of the camp, where a person was deprived of their name, clothes, and rights, those who created an internal citadel within themselves, ignoring the SS attempts to humiliate their dignity, maintained their mental health. Adrian does the same in the conditions of a corporate concentration camp. He deprives Lucas of power over his emotions, making any of Lucas's actions meaningless. If aggression does not reach the goal, it returns to the aggressor. 4. Phase, ___, quote, _98, Adrian's counterstrike is not revenge. It is superiority through disappearance. Lesson number 6. You cannot defeat someone who is not playing. Become a void, and any attack on you will be an attack on themselves. The final protocol of the Superman. Total introversion of resources. Stop wasting energy on analyzing why they acted this way. It does not matter. Only what I will do next matters. The shadow effect. When you are deleted, do not try to stay. Disappear so effectively that your absence becomes more tangible than your presence. Let them choke on the responsibility that you left to them. Will to power, according to Nietzsche. Understand that morality, politeness, and social norms are chains for the weak. The only reality is your will. If you have decided that you have won, you have won. Objective reality will adjust. 5. Phase, sensory immersion. Adrian hears the heavy door closing. He is left alone in the vast hall. The temperature in the room seems perfect to him, neither warm nor cold. He tastes the pure air, devoid of the impurities of someone else's fear. His vision becomes ultra-sharp. He sees every crack on the glass, every dust mote in the beam of light. In this vacuum, he feels absolute power. He is not just a man who lost a company. He is a consciousness that has just dropped its ballast. He takes a step toward the elevator, and the sound of his footsteps on the marble sounds like a sentence to the old world. We have completed the cycle. Now you possess a full arsenal. From defense in the office jungles to active attack and final transformation. These tools are dangerous. In unskilled hands, they lead to isolation. In skilled ones, to absolute dominion. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. F. Nietzsche. You have looked into the abyss. Now the abyss is a part of you. Like Osterfeld, knowledge of the mechanisms of the psyche is your main freedom. Subscribe to explore the hidden facets of human behavior together. And be sure to write in the comments which psychological pattern or strategy we shall analyze next time. Let us search for the truth together.